Emily jolted awake at the loud banging on the front door. Her heart pounded as she glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. Who in their right mind would be knocking this late? She turned to her husband's side of the bed, but as usual, it was empty. A cold chill ran through her as she slowly got up, wrapping her robe around her fuller frame. She shuffled towards the door, her stomach twisting in knots. With trembling hands, she unlocked it. Peeking through the crack, there stood a woman, young, tall, and drop-dead gorgeous. Her tight red dress barely covered her thighs, and her long dark curls spilled over her shoulders. Emily's breath hitched. "Who are you?" Emily's voice cracked. The woman smirked. "Oh, honey, I should be asking you that. But since you're the wife, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Veronica, your husband's girlfriend." Emily felt her knees buckle. No. This couldn't be happening. "You're lying," she snapped, but her voice wavered. Veronica tilted her head, amused. "Oh, sweetheart. If I were lying, why would I be standing at your doorstep in the middle of the night? He's with me right now, but I figured you should know what kind of man you're married to." The air left Emily's lungs as if someone had punched her. She stared at the woman, unable to form words. Was this real? Had her worst fears just been confirmed? "You don't believe me? Fine. Call him." Veronica crossed her arms. "Better yet, come see for yourself." Emily's hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and dialed her husband's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. She called again. Straight to voicemail. Her blood ran cold. Veronica chuckled. "He won't pick up, dear. He's a little preoccupied." Emily's mind screamed no, but her heart already knew the truth. Her husband, her Daniel, was cheating. She gripped the doorframe, her breath coming in sharp gasps. "How did I get here? How did I become this woman?" Veronica watched her, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Poor thing. I almost feel bad for you. Almost." And with that, she turned on her heels, strutted down the steps, and disappeared into the night. Emily stood frozen, the cold wind biting her skin. Her entire world had just shattered, and she had no idea what to do next. Emily stood frozen at the door, her heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the silence of the night. The cold air brushed against her skin, but she felt nothing, only the burning humiliation Veronica had left behind. Her hands clenched into fists. This can't be true. It had to be some kind of sick joke. Daniel loved her. Didn't he? Tears welled in her eyes as she dialed his number again. Voicemail. Her grip tightened on the phone. Coward! He was ignoring her. He knew she would find out, yet he didn't even have the decency to face her. With trembling hands, she grabbed her car keys. She had to see it with her own eyes. She had to know. 30 minutes later, Emily's hands shook on the steering wheel as she parked outside a dimly lit motel. She recognized Daniel's black SUV immediately, parked like a brazen declaration of betrayal. Her breath hitched as she sat there, staring at the vehicle. What now? Walk in and catch him red-handed? What would that even change? But something inside her snapped. She needed to know the truth, the ugly, gut-wrenching truth. She stepped out of the car, her knees weak, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The motel sign flickered above her, casting eerie shadows over the parking lot. Emily walked to the reception, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel Miller. What room? The receptionist, a bored-looking man, barely glanced up. Room 214. Her stomach twisted. Oh God. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The hallway stretched endlessly, each heartbeat echoing in her ears. Room 214. She reached it. The door was slightly ajar. Voices. A woman's sultry laughter. Emily's heart shattered. She pushed the door open, and there he was, her husband, shirtless, lying in bed with Veronica wrapped around him. Daniel didn't even look surprised. He didn't jump out of bed. He didn't even have the decency to act guilty. Instead, he sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. "Emily, what are you doing here?" What was she doing here? Emily felt her entire body shake. "Are you serious, Daniel?" Her voice cracked. He exhaled loudly, annoyed, as if she was the problem. Veronica chuckled from the bed. "Told you she'd show up." Emily clenched her fists. "Get out." Her voice was low but firm. Veronica smirked and leaned against Daniel, tracing a finger down his chest. "Sorry, darling, but I don't take orders from women who let their husbands cheat." Emily's breath hitched. Daniel sat up. "Emily, listen, this isn't what you think." "Lies." "Then tell me, Daniel. What is this? What am I supposed to think?" Silence. Veronica smirked, picking up her purse. "I'll leave you two lovebirds to talk." "But, sweetheart," she leaned in close to Emily, "if your own husband doesn't want you, maybe it's time to ask yourself why." Emily's face burned. How dare she? Veronica gave Daniel a wink before walking out, her heels clicking loudly on the motel floor. The door slammed shut. Silence. Emily stared at Daniel, her vision blurred with tears. "Say something," he exhaled. "Emily, I'm tired." "Tired? Of what?" Her voice trembled. "Of me?" Daniel didn't answer. The air left her lungs. There it was. The unspoken truth. She had suspected it for months. The distance, the coldness, the way he barely touched her anymore. But hearing it like this, seeing it in his eyes, Emily felt something inside her shatter. "You're not even sorry, are you?" she whispered. Daniel rubbed his temples. "Emily, let's not do this. Just go home." "Go home?" Her lips trembled. "You don't care, do you?" Her lips trembled. "You don't care, do you?" His jaw tensed. "Emily, I don't want to fight." "He doesn't want to fight?" "He doesn't want to fight." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "You know what, Daniel? I wanted to believe you still loved me. But you don't. And the worst part? You don't even care that you don't." Silence. Daniel stood up, grabbing his shirt. "Do whatever you want, Emily." His voice was flat. "Divorce me. Stay. I don't care." Emily gasped, stepping back as if he had physically hit her. Tears blurred her vision. He didn't care. Not about her. Not about the vows they took. Not about their 4 children waiting for their father at home. Emily choked back a sob. "You were my world, Daniel." He buttoned his shirt and walked past her. "Then that's your mistake." And with that, he left. Emily collapsed onto the motel floor. Alone. Unwanted. Emily sat on the cold motel floor, numb. The walls around her seemed to close in, suffocating her. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. "Do whatever you want, Emily. I don't care." A sharp sob escaped her throat. How did we get here? They had been happy once. She had been beautiful, full of life, confident. She had been his everything. Now she was just a shadow of the woman she used to be. She forced herself up, gripping the edge of the bed for support. Her hands trembled as she wiped away her tears. She couldn't stay here. She needed to get home, to her children. They were the only reason she hadn't collapsed completely. Back home, the house was silent. Emily stepped inside, the familiar warmth of the living room feeling foreign. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. She tiptoed up the stairs, peeking into her children's rooms. For little lives. Her heart clenched. How could she leave? How could she take them away from their father, no matter how cruel he was to her? Tears burned her eyes. "I have to stay, not for Daniel. For them." The next morning, Emily stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of oatmeal as if nothing had happened, as if her world hadn't shattered, as if her husband hadn't just admitted he didn't love her anymore. Daniel walked in casually, dressed for work. No guilt. No shame. Just indifference. He poured himself a cup of coffee. Didn't even look at her. Emily's stomach twisted. Does he even see me anymore? Their oldest daughter, Sophie, ran in, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, Daddy, good morning. Emily forced a smile. Good morning, sweetheart. Sophie turned to Daniel. Daddy, will you take me to school today? Daniel finally looked up, but not at Emily, at Sophie. And he smiled. Of course. Baby girl. Emily's chest tightened. So he can still smile. Just not for me. She turned back to the stove, blinking back tears. That evening, Emily's younger sister, Lisa, showed up unexpectedly. Lisa took one look at her and frowned. Emily, what happened? Emily forced a laugh. Nothing, Lisa. Why would you think that? Lisa folded her arms. Because you look like you haven't slept. Because I can see through your fake smile. Because... She lowered her voice. I know Daniel is cheating on you. Emily's heart stopped. You knew? She whispered. Lisa sighed. Everyone knows, Emily. He's not even hiding it. Emily felt like she had been punched in the gut. Everyone knew? She clenched her fists. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. Because we knew you wouldn't leave. Emily's breath hitched. You're still in love with him. Lisa continued. And you think staying is best for the kids. But Emily. At what cost? Emily looked away. I can't leave. Lisa sighed. Then just promise me something. Emily hesitated. What? Lisa held her gaze. Promise me you won't lose yourself. A week later, Emily was at the grocery store when she heard an all too familiar voice. Well, well, well. Look who we have here. Emily turned slowly, and there stood Veronica. Perfect hair. Perfect body. The woman who had stolen her husband. Veronica smirked. Still holding on, huh? I don't know if I should admire your strength or pity you. Emily's blood boiled. Stay away from me. Veronica leaned in. Oh, sweetie, I'm not the one you should be telling that to. Your husband crawls to me willingly. Emily's vision blurred with rage. She wanted to scream. She wanted to slap that smirk off Veronica's face. But she did nothing. Because deep down, she knew. Veronica wasn't lying. Emily clenched her fists, turning away before she lost control. But as she walked out of the store, she heard Veronica's last cruel words. You may wear his ring, but I own his heart. Emily stumbled into her car, her breath shallow. How much more could she take? Late that night, Emily sat on the bathroom floor, hugging her knees. She had done everything. She had sacrificed everything. Her beauty, her confidence, her happiness. And for what? To be treated like nothing? Tears streamed down her face as she stared at herself in the mirror. Her once bright eyes were dull. Her once slim body was fuller. Her once unshakable confidence was gone. She was a ghost of herself. And yet, she still loved Daniel. She still couldn't leave. Days passed. Weeks. Emily stayed. She cooked. She cleaned. She smiled at her children. And every night, when Daniel came home late, smelling of a woman who wasn't her, she simply turned her back and closed her eyes, pretending she didn't hear the soft chuckles on his phone or the way he barely acknowledged her existence. It was easier to pretend, because pretending meant she didn't have to face the truth that she had lost him. But the worst part, she had lost herself too. One evening, Daniel sat at the dinner table, scrolling through his phone, completely ignoring Emily. The kids were chatting, laughing. Emily was serving food. It was a perfect family scene, except it wasn't. Daniel, she said softly, placing a plate in front of him. He barely looked up. She tried again. Daniel, His phone buzzed, and like clockwork, he excused himself, stepping away to answer. Emily didn't have to guess who was calling. Lisa's words echoed in her head. He's not even hiding it. Emily felt her stomach churn. Her hands trembled as she picked up a spoon. Sophie, their oldest, frowned. "Mommy, why does Daddy always leave when his phone rings?" Emily's breath hitched. Even the children were noticing. She forced a smile. "Eat your food, sweetheart." But inside, her heart was breaking. How long before the kids realized what was truly happening? For months, Emily remained silent. She tolerated his coldness. She endured the late nights. She swallowed the humiliation. But something inside her was shifting. One night, Daniel came home past midnight, his shirt slightly rumpled, his collar stained with red lipstick. Emily stood by the door, watching him. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice calm. Daniel didn't even flinch. He tossed his keys on the counter. "Out with her?" A smirk touched his lips. "Why do you ask questions you already know the answer to?" Emily's fingers curled into fists. For the first time, she felt something other than sadness. Anger. She swallowed hard. "Do you even care how this makes me feel?" Daniel sighed, looking at her with nothing but boredom. "Emily, you don't need to do this. You made your choice to stay, remember?" Her throat tightened. "So that gives you the right to keep humiliating me?" Daniel shrugged. "I never lied to you." Emily's lip trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. For months she had been weak. But tonight, something inside her was waking up. "You're a horrible husband, Daniel," she whispered, voice shaking. He chuckled. "As long as I'm a good father, that's all that matters." Emily's stomach twisted. She wanted to scream. She wanted to hit him. But instead, she did something she had never done before. She walked past him, grabbed a pillow and blanket from the couch, and tossed them at his feet. "Sleep here tonight." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You don't respect me as your wife? Then you don't get to sleep in my bed." For the first time in months, Daniel actually looked surprised. And for the first time in months, Emily felt a tiny spark of power return to her. Lisa noticed the change immediately. "You're finally standing up for yourself," she said one afternoon over coffee. Emily sighed. "Not really. I don't want to feel like a doormat anymore." Lisa squeezed her hand. "That's a start." But Emily wasn't convinced. Because standing up for herself meant nothing if she still stayed. And she knew, deep down, she was still trapped. Lisa studied her. Have you thought about working again?" Emily flinched. I haven't worked in years, so what? You were amazing at your old job. You still can be." Emily bit her lip. The idea of rebuilding herself felt impossible. But at the same time, maybe Lisa was right. Maybe it was time to start thinking about herself again. Just when Emily thought she could endure the pain, Daniel took things to another level. One afternoon, she was scrolling through her phone when an anonymous message popped up. "Unknown number, you should know. Your husband took Veronica on vacation last weekend." In your car. Emily's blood ran cold. Her car. Their family car. Her hands trembled as she checked their credit card statements. Hotel. Restaurant. Flights. Paid with their joint account. He had used her money to spoil his mistress. Emily's body shook. Her vision blurred. How much more could she take? That night, Daniel walked into the house, whistling. Emily was waiting. She held up his credit card statement. "How dare you?" Daniel barely glanced at it. "What? Are you really asking me that?" Her voice cracked. "You took her on vacation. With our money." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "Emily, calm down. Calm down." She was shaking. "Do you even realize what you're doing to me?" He exhaled, annoyed. "I told you. You can leave if you want." Emily clenched her fists so tight her nails dug into her palms. She had no money. No stability. No way out. And Daniel knew that. That's why he didn't care. Because she had no power. But as she stood there, Staring at the man she had given everything to, she realized something that was about to change. Emily waited until Daniel was deep in sleep. She moved cautiously, careful not to make a sound. Her hands trembled as she reached for his wallet, sliding out $100 bill. Her heart pounded. Was this stealing? No, it was survival. For years, she had relied on Daniel for everything. He had made sure of that. Kept her dependent. Kept her powerless. But tonight, she was taking back control, even if it was just a little. She slipped the money into an old shoebox hidden deep in her closet. Her first step toward freedom. Emily started making excuses to leave the house more often. Lisa helped her get a small remote job. Nothing big, just editing documents for an online company. It wasn't much. But every paycheck, she saved every penny. She lied to Daniel, telling him she was visiting her sister, but in reality, she was working from a coffee shop, slowly regaining the confidence he had stripped away. One night, Lisa grinned at her. "You've changed, Em. There's fire in your eyes again." Emily smiled. For the first time in years, she felt alive, but she wasn't ready yet. She needed more time. And Daniel? He still didn't suspect a thing. It happened on a cold Friday night. Emily was cleaning up when Daniel waltzed in, smirking, drunk, and reeking of perfume. But this time, he wasn't alone. Veronica was with him. Emily's breath itched. He brought her home. "Emily," Daniel slurred, throwing his jacket on the couch. "Make us some coffee, would you?" Emily just stood there, frozen. Veronica smirked. "Oh, don't look so shocked. He said you were fine with this." "Fine with this?" Emily's stomach dropped. She looked at Daniel. Did he really think she was that weak? "Emily!" Daniel snapped his fingers. "Coffee!" She clenched her jaw. She wasn't ready to leave yet, but she would never make that coffee. Not tonight, not ever again. Instead, she turned, walked straight into the bedroom, and locked the door. Daniel laughed behind her. "Suit yourself!" Let him laugh. He had no idea what was coming. Emily's hands shook as she counted the cash in her shoebox. $1,720. It wasn't enough to leave yet, but it was enough to know that she could, that she would. Daniel was growing bolder, more reckless. Bringing Veronica into their home was a declaration of war. And Emily, she was about to become a warrior. She started looking at apartments, small ones, cheap ones. She refused to let her kids suffer for Daniel's selfishness. She started working more hours, making excuses to be out of the house longer. And Daniel, still completely unaware. One afternoon, Emily came home early. She wasn't supposed to, but fate had other plans. As she walked in, she heard something that made her stop cold. Daniel was on the phone. "Yeah, she's still here," he chuckled. "But don't worry. She's not leaving. She's too weak for that." Emily's heart shattered. "You know what? Maybe I'll finally file for divorce and get the house. She can take the kids and cry somewhere else." That was it. She had been enduring everything for her kids. For love. But Daniel, he had never planned to keep her. He had only been waiting for the right time to throw her away. Emily clenched her fists. "Not if I throw him away first." It was time. Emily didn't wait another second. She emptied the shoebox. She called Lisa. And when Daniel came home that night, he found an empty closet, a missing wedding ring, and a single note on the table. "You should have treated me better." And just like that, he laughed. "Finally," he muttered, stretching his arms. "No more nagging. No more crying. No more wife." For the first time in years, Daniel felt free. That night, he invited Veronica over. They drank. They laughed. They celebrated. He didn't care where Emily went. He didn't care if she was struggling. All that mattered was that he was single again. No baggage. No responsibilities. Or so he thought. Weeks passed. Then months. At first, Daniel enjoyed his freedom. but slowly. Reality crept in. The house was too quiet. No one cooked for him. No one picked up after him. And worst of all, his children barely called. One day, he bumped into Lisa at the grocery store. "You're looking rough." She smirked. "What happened?" "Life without Emily not as fun as you thought?" Daniel rolled his eyes. "Please." "I'm doing just fine." Lisa shrugged. "Right. That's why you're buying microwave dinners instead of home-cooked meals." Daniel clenched his jaw. Why did he even care? Emily was gone. That was her choice. But something deep inside him was starting to sting. And it got worse when his son, Jake, refused to visit one weekend. "I don't want to come, Dad," Jake said over the phone. "Mom actually spends time with us." That's when it hit him. Emily didn't just leave him. She took the one thing he never thought she'd take, his children's love. And that was something he wasn't about to lose. Daniel stormed into his lawyer's office. "I want full custody," he said. His lawyer raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" Daniel scoffed. "She left. She abandoned the marriage. She took my kids and brainwashed them against me. Do you have proof of neglect?" the lawyer asked. Daniel hesitated. "No, but..." "Proof of abuse? No, but..." the lawyer sighed. "Daniel, the court doesn't take children from stable mothers unless she's unfit. Do you really think you can win this?" Daniel gritted his teeth. He wasn't about to lose. He didn't care what it took. Emily had to pay for walking away from him. Emily sat in court, her heart pounding. She had fought so hard to build a life for herself, to create a home for her kids. Now, Daniel wanted to rip it away. He sat across from her, confident, smirking, like he had already won. The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Carter, you claim the mother is unfit. Do you have evidence?" Daniel's lawyer stood. "We believe Mrs. Carter abandoned the marriage without cause, destabilizing the children's lives." Emily's lawyer fired back. "We have evidence that Mr. Carter was emotionally abusive, unfaithful, and neglected his role as a father for years." Daniel's smirk vanished, and then the judge leaned forward. After reviewing the evidence, she paused. Daniel clenched his fists. Emily held her breath. The courtroom was silent, and then, "Do you think Emily was wrong for leaving? Should Daniel win custody? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If this video gets 90,000 or more views and 100 or more comments, we will upload part 2.
Please subscribe, like, comment and share this video. It means a lot to us. Thank you.